it was a little bit rough at the beginning, but then it got, so bad to a certain point where basically I sat her down and was kind of preparing her for living her life without me, basically. I wasn't sleeping. I was sleeping less than 10 hours a week.
Yeah.
And my nervous system felt like it was on fire, like, almost 18 hours a day. And I couldn't quit moving. I couldn't sit down. Like I really could not sit down for more than 5 seconds.
Right.
Just couldn't do it. Like I would work standing up. I would do my meetings while I was running around in my neighborhood. I ate standing up. It would luckily give way about like 10 p.m. each night, and I'd be able to lay down for a few hours. But as soon as like it got like 5 or 6 a.m., I was up and I couldn't lay down until 10 p.m. again. I mean, I lost like 40 pounds.
Wow.
But I think I probably lost the first 20 pounds in like less than 10 days. Or it was about 10 days probably. And then the other 20 came off pretty quickly after that too.
Hey, what is going on, guys? This is Mark Millick here with the Moral Medicine YouTube channel. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking to Josh. Josh is a PFS patient that's had PFS for about 2 to 3 years now, I believe. He has been fortunate enough to have gone to a certain point of recovery. And regardless, we still really appreciate you sharing your story. So, Josh, thank you so much for joining us.
Sure, absolutely.
So, Josh, let's go ahead and get started here. So, can you tell me kind of what your life was like before you took finasteride?
Yeah. So, I mean, I was like a very, I guess, ambitious person, really progressing in my career, pretty outgoing as well. Like I run like a fantasy football league. I'm just a person who very much like a people person, trying to get people together, things like that.
Sure.
That's just kind of how it was. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And then you took finasteride for, I think it was hair loss, correct?
Yeah. It's for hair loss. I just kind of fell for the marketing, did the Hims thing online.
Is that what it was? You went through Hims. And so can you explain that process? How was it? How easy was it to obtain the medication?
Sure. Absolutely just super easy. I mean, I just, kind of on a whim almost. It was like, you know what? I feel like I just want to keep the hair I have. Is about the same time that my dad started losing his hair. So I figured, why not? Went online, took a couple pictures of my head, sent it to some doctor online, and they shipped it to my door. That easy.
It is that easy. That was pretty much my experience. I had to take a few pictures of my scalp, and I think within 2 weeks I had the medication at my doorstep. And it seems like everybody that goes on Hims gets prescribed finasteride. It's not even just minoxidil. It's typically finasteride and minoxidil. So did you get that combination by chance?
I did. It was both. Yep.
Okay. And you said, I mean, were you losing your hair at that point, or this was more for like just preventative measures?
I mean, I was like, just like in the shower, it was kind of coming out a little bit.
Right. Yeah.
And I just, like I said, it was around the same time that my dad started losing his hair. So I was like, I think it's starting and I just want to keep what I have. So I better take it now. Was kind of the thought process.
That's what they tell you, right? You take it at the first sign of hair loss. You don't take it when you lose your hair because it doesn't really do a whole lot with regrowth necessarily. It helps you maintain what you currently have. So that's unfortunately the trap that a lot of people fall into, because even for me, I was having minor hair loss. I went ahead and took it just because I was seeing extra hair in the shower. And then unfortunately, that's when you get hit with this syndrome. So when you took the medication, how soon after did you start noticing side effects?
Yeah, so like I guess I didn't really notice, like looking back, there were things that were noticeable while I was taking it, but I didn't really actually notice symptoms until I stopped taking the medication. So I travel a lot for work.
Okay.
And I accidentally left it at home, so I didn't take it for like a week. And that's when it really started. But like I said, looking back, there were signs before that while I was on it where I was just like, there's like certain hobbies that I did, and I just kind of was losing interest in those hobbies. I didn't really realize it. It was like more minor symptoms.
Right.
And I was having like anxiety symptoms, like I was just having trouble dealing with the stress at work. I didn't really realize it. But then once I stopped taking medication, that's when the floor dropped out.
Were you connecting those symptoms to the drug, or did you just assume maybe it was something else?
At first, no. And then, but pretty quickly after the onset of symptoms, I kind of drew the connection. I don't know what it was, because I remember when I did sign up for the medication, they do have you look at a page that mentions post-finasteride syndrome, but it's very marketed in a way that, and marketing is, I think, the word that I want to use,
Sure.
to make you think that it's not real.
Right.
Like, it's just like, is finasteride, post-finasteride real? We want to give you all the information so you can make the right decision, but they clearly skew it to where you think that it's not real. And then I just thought about it, I'm like, I remember reading something about this, and I looked it up, and then I just, all the symptoms just connected the dots, right? So I knew what had happened at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't recall reading anything about post-finasteride syndrome when I went through HIMSS, but I did read about the standard side effects, right? You got the sexual side effects. I think it mentioned low libido, maybe testicular pain. I think it mentioned something about depression, but from what I can recall, it said that once you quit taking the medication, all that will eventually dissipate, obviously. So how long did you ultimately take it for then?
I took it for 9 months.
For 9 months. Okay. Starting in, I think you said 2020, right?
I think it was in 2019 that I started, like the end of 2019, and I stopped in like June of 2020.
Okay.
I think that's the correct timeline.
And so you basically you just went on vacation, or you forgot it for you went to work or something, and you forgot it for a week, and then you started developing symptoms at that point. So when you started developing those symptoms, did you stop? Did you realize, okay, maybe this has got to be the finasteride, or did you connect it right then, or kind of what was that like?
So like I didn't. So the reason I stopped, and then like, it was like a week that I was away from home where this was going, and I started just having trouble sleeping, and like I had this thing where like right when I was about to fall asleep, my whole body would just like jerk, and I would wake up, and I would just never be able to fall asleep.
Yeah.
So that started, and then when I was going home on my way, while I was flying home, and like I just had this just ridiculous anxiety. And muscle twitches, and to the point where I had convinced myself that I had ALS.
Yeah.
So I had a family member that had ALS, and I just completely convinced myself that I had it. And I was just like, I got to stop taking it, taking this medicine. I got to, get off of it. Just, I don't know, like a body cleanse or something.
Sure.
And so I stopped taking it completely. And then later on, probably maybe a week or two later, I don't even know, I kind of connected the dots.
Did the symptoms continue to get worse after you came off it?
Yeah. So like at the beginning, it was just like the muscle twitches were really bad. The insomnia, like it wasn't like complete insomnia at that point. I just kind of like just had trouble sleeping. I kept waking up earlier, just couldn't seem to get enough sleep.
Right.
The anxiety was the main symptom I had at the beginning. And I started just noticing things like because of the anxiety, I started kind of taking like coping mechanisms. Like I started working outside. Like it got to the point where just being inside made me feel like claustrophobic or something. And it was kind of like this unexplained anxiety, right? So I'd work outside and I'd like start listening to music. Right. And one day I was listening to music and it was like one of my favorite songs. And I was like, this sounds like nails on a chalkboard. This is really weird, and I was like, something is really wrong, and it just got worse from there. Anhedonia set in, and I just couldn't enjoy anything.
Right.
Depression, and it just continued downhill. And then actually, I had kind of the upswing, where I felt like I was recovered for about like slowly over 3 months, and then it got even worse.
Oh wow! Okay.
It got to a point where I didn't think it could get worse, and then it got worse.
I hear that often. I hear a lot of people, including myself. I mean, I continued developing symptoms a year into being off the medication, and it almost sounds far-fetched. You can't believe that, but it does happen. So you had a period where after about 3 months, you started to feel a little bit better, and then things took a turn for the worse, and then you started to get worse again, you said.
Yeah, I did. So I recovered to the point where, I was recovered for a few months, and I'd read online, it seemed like longer than most, I'd read about the false recovery because I went to the forums pretty soon after I figured out what was going on.
Sure. And
most people had said, they only recovered for like a week or two. And so I was at like, 2 months or so, and I thought I was in the clear, and it just, the bottom just completely fell out. Yeah. And like you said, like developing new symptoms, I'm like you said, 2 to 3 years in now, maybe 2.5, something like that. And I still have, even though I'm mostly recovered, like every few weeks or few months, I will have like a crash. And my most recent crash, I had symptoms from my most recent crash maybe 3 weeks ago
Yeah.
that I had never had up until this point.
So
Completely new symptoms.
what were those symptoms then?
I had like swollen, like my chest was swollen, like puffy nipples and sore.
Yeah.
Kind of like estrogen,
Yeah.
estrogenic going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So it took you basically 2 to 3 years to get to the point where you're not fully recovered, but you're, what would you say, around 80, 90% at this point?
Yeah, 90 plus. I mean, the vast
Okay,
majority of the time, I'm completely good
sure.
at this point. There's just a few things that are missing, but it's nitpicking, I would say, at this
Yeah,
point, kind of.
absolutely. It's amazing though. It took you that long to recover from this medication after taking it for only 9 months, obviously. And I can relate to you entirely
Yeah.
on the muscle twitching. I mean, I had the ALS scare as well. I had doctors even speculating that maybe I could potentially have ALS. Because I went to 3 different neurologists, and that's a really, really scary thing. Did you have twitching throughout the entire body? Was it more localized to one particular spot, or was it just
It was
everywhere?
all over, just muscle twitches everywhere. And like, I started losing control of like it was like my calf muscle or something where I could not lift my foot for a
Oh,
while.
yeah.
Kind of happened. So I was losing control of my muscles too, to some extent, which really made me think I had ALS.
Yeah, absolutely,
Too.
man. Did you go to the doctor or anything, or have them assess you?
Yeah, I did. I went to multiple doctors, so
Oh,
many, so many doctors,
okay. Of
um, and it all amounted to nothing essentially. The first doctor, basically told me there's no way that can happen.
course.
Just kind of, and just said you need to go to a psychiatrist. Like
Yeah.
basically, I said I'm kind of crazy. And the other doctors were more, more or less helpful in certain areas, but none of them agreed that that finasteride is what could be causing it.
Right.
And I realized at a certain point that I was just not going to get help from medical professionals, and
Yeah.
I was completely on my own.
Absolutely. Did they run any type of diagnostic test?
It's terrifying.
It is terrifying. Do they do any EMGs or MRIs or MRAs or anything?
Yeah. I mean, and everything came out with a clean bill of health
Yeah.
for the most part. The only thing that did cause one doctor concern is when I went to them during kind of before my initial recovery crash, right? During that first phase, I went to the doctor, and they took some. I was like, just please just take some blood work, at least so we can get like a baseline.
Right.
Because I
Absolutely.
was feeling good at the time. I'm like, let's see, you know,
Yeah.
check me now because I feel good. And if it happens again, if I crash again, we'll know something is wrong.
Like,
And then when the bottom fell out, I went back and my testosterone measured like 0. And they're like, something
wow.
is really wrong.
Yeah.
So go to and they finally recommended me to an endocrinologist.
Mhm.
And by the time I went to them, everything, even though I felt terrible, they're like, everything measures fine. You're fine. There's nothing wrong with you. Go home.
So your
Basically.
testosterone dropped significantly, and then when you went to the endocrinologist, everything was back to normal. Your levels were essentially fine again. Is that right?
Yeah, essentially. Yeah.
Man, that's
This
insane.
is like a week later,
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird how much these symptoms can fluctuate from day to day. I have days
Yeah.
even now where I almost can't even get out of bed because I'm so exhausted. I have so much fatigue, and then the next day I'll be okay. I can at least I can move a little bit. I can function a little bit better, but it does vary, and it doesn't make any sense. There's no rhyme or reason. And like I said, the muscle twitching too. My muscle twitching was everywhere, man. I mean, it wasn't just localized to one area. It was on my legs, my thighs, my arms, my biceps, my back, my face. I could feel twitching in my face too. I mean, the craziest thing you can imagine. And your story is pretty common where you went to a doctor, or you went to multiple doctors, and they just said this is psychosomatic, this is all in your head, this has nothing to do with finasteride. And you said it was terrifying, and I completely relate to that. And I'm sure many people here who are watching this video can
Yeah.
completely relate to that because you have the medical system which is supposed to take care of you, and then when you go to the doctors and they tell you this is we don't know what this is, where do you go from there? It's
Yeah.
incredibly frightening. Okay, so you mentioned that after 3 years, roughly, you're about 90% better. You still had a crash recently within the past couple of weeks, I think you said, though. I think that's one point I want to
Yeah.
make too, is that a lot of people, once you take this medication and you have your initial crash, it seems like our bodies are hypersensitive to other things. We don't even know what those other things are necessarily. For some people, it can be specifically the food they eat or the supplements they take. But you know, you make one wrong move, you take one wrong thing, and next thing you know, you're back to square one, and it makes absolutely no sense. I mean, were you taking any vitamins before you got post-finasteride syndrome, or did you have any type of, any particular diet you were using?
Yeah. No, so before I got it, there's nothing. Like I was, no limitations.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, I wouldn't say like I was, going crazy or anything, but I mean, I would like drink with my friends on the weekends
Oh
sometimes
yeah.
and stuff like that. But after I got post-finasteride syndrome, I went completely clean. I don't know if that has anything to do with my recovery at all. Um, but I lived a very, very clean life for the past 3 years. Now I live normally. The only thing I do now is I don't drink. I still react very, very negatively to alcohol. I tested it maybe 3 weeks ago, and it
Mm.
was I'm still sensitive to alcohol for some reason. I don't know why.
And man, that's so unfortunate because I mean, you said you really had no limitations to what you could kind of consume, back before you got this. You didn't have to watch your diet too closely. And now, even if you have alcohol, that can have a negative
Yeah,
adverse effect on you. And I
yeah,
think, what a lot of people do, like you did, is they try to eat cleanly. They try to have a gluten-free diet. They try to, have, and take plenty of fruits and vegetables and eat clean. But we don't know if that helps or not. I mean, it's hard to tell.
yeah.
I
No
just
idea.
know, yeah, I just know for me, like if I have any type of gluten, that my body just can't tolerate that anymore. And before I could eat whatever the hell I wanted
Hmm.
to. There were no symptoms
Yeah,
whatsoever. So yeah, it's unfortunate. Our bodies are hypersensitive to whatever this is, and now we just have to be careful about what we expose ourselves to.
yeah,
Um, so did you tell your family about this or your friends? Were they aware of this?
yeah. Yeah, I did. Not very many people.
Okay. Good.
I told my family. My
Yeah.
family was first people I told. Told my wife. I told my parents.
Mm.
And then I had a couple of friends that I did tell.
Okay. If you don't mind me asking, did they believe you? Hopefully.
So not my friends just kind of. So actually, one of my friends was in the medical profession, and he had heard of it before. He believed me kind of immediately, which was really good just to have him to. I mean, to immediately have someone that believed you
Absolutely.
and talk to you was
Yeah.
great. To rely on him just to vent.
Right.
But like even both my wife and my parents, my wife didn't really at the beginning. She did not. She thought it was psychosomatic kind of thing, and it was a little bit rough at the beginning.
Right.
But then it got so bad to a certain point where basically I sat her down and was kind of preparing her for living her life without me, basically at
Oh
that
my
point.
goodness. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And he it clicked for her that something this is not no was not me. Something was
Right.
wrong.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
from that point on, it was I still remember that moment, and it just completely changed. And she was I could not have gotten through it without her. From that point on, she was
Sure.
absolutely fantastic. So
Oh
that was
man.
great. My mom was helpful the entire time, but she also kind of didn't get it to a certain point. Like she was very helpful, very supportive.
Hmm.
Absolutely could not have done it without her either, 100%.
Hmm.
But she was like trying to force me into therapy, and it was, which I can't knock therapy. It's probably good for some people, but I mean, at the point that I was at, it was like there's something wrong with my brain, and
Right.
therapy. No amount of therapy is going to help me recover from what is going on right now,
Right.
And I
Right.
just
Right. Yeah.
she could not understand that.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, you're dealing with a mystery illness that's incredibly debilitating. I mean, and I'm not, I'm very pro therapy for people. I just know for some people that doesn't help, unfortunately. I
yeah,
mean, and to not
yeah,
be believed, not just by doctors, but by your family members too. I mean, that's incredibly frightening,
yeah,
Um, and I appreciate you sharing that because I've shared this with a lot of people in my life, and I think there is still some skepticism by certain people. And for me, I guess for you, you said you primarily had neurological effects, right? Did you have any type of
yeah.
physical changes or anything?
I mean, I lost like 40 pounds,
Wow.
but
Okay.
I think I probably lost the first 20 pounds in like less than 10 days, or it was
Yeah.
about 10 days probably. And
Yeah.
then the other 20 came off pretty quickly after that too. I was about at my heaviest, I was like 175. I dropped down to 135.
Oh my
And I'm
goodness.
like 5'10", 5'11", something like that. So, I mean,
Yeah.
I dropped a lot of weight.
Wow.
And like I was gonna say, but physical changes, like other than that, I don't know. And that could have been due to like one of my worst symptoms was akathisia. I could not stop moving. I couldn't sit down. I didn't sit down to eat. I just never stopped moving. Like I felt like if I was gonna die, like if I stopped moving. And so I mean, the fact that I was so active,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure that had something to do with it. Plus, my appetite was like zero
Sure.
because food tasted like gray. So
Yeah.
my wife basically had to make me eat.
Sure. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know how much of that is dedicated is a side effect of my side effects or
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but to lose 10 pounds, or you said 20 pounds in 10 days, I mean, people had to have noticed, right? I mean, that's a significant
yeah,
drop in
yeah,
weight. And the only thing that
yeah,
changed your life was that you just came off finasteride, right? I mean, there was no other change to
yeah.
your diet or anything. Um, I lost 20 pounds within the first 6 weeks, and I know how frightening that was because I'm an avid, weightlifter. I lift weights all the time. I have a very, at this
Yeah.
point, clean diet. And yeah, to lose 20 pounds in 6 weeks when nothing else changed, I was still intaking the same amount of calories. I was working out 4 or 5 days a week. I couldn't begin to explain that to people. It was the scariest thing in the world, And I was wondering too, how much longer
Yeah.
is this going to continue for? Because I was 200 pounds, I think, when I came off an asteroid. I got down to 180 in 6 weeks. I hadn't been 180 since
Mhm.
high school. I mean, 10 years ago. So I know how scary that was. And you got down from, I think you said 175 down to 135. Is that correct?
Yep,
Oh
that's
man.
right. Yep. I did not look healthy. Definitely didn't look
Josh,
healthy.
sincerely, man, I'm so sorry that you went through that. I feel for you because I was in a very similar boat. I know how frightening that is. And then what was the other thing you mentioned? Anacesthesia, or how do you pronounce that?
Akathisia.
Anesthesia. Okay.
Akathisia. I think that's how you pronounce it. I don't know. It's just one of the terms that I came across when
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out what was wrong with me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's just like restless leg, but for my whole body. Like I just
It's like an
never
inability
could stop
to sit
moving.
still.
Yeah, I just like I couldn't sit down. Like I really could not sit down for more than 5 seconds.
Right. Right.
Just couldn't do it. Like I would work standing up. I would do my meetings while I was running around my neighborhood.
Yeah.
I ate standing up. It would luckily give way about like 10 p.m. each night, and
Yeah.
I'd be able to lay down for a few hours. But as soon as like it got like 5 or 6 a.m., I was up and I couldn't lay down until 10 p.m. again. So
That's unbelievable, man. So you would take meetings while standing up and like walking around because you literally just couldn't sit still.
yeah, had no choice. So yeah, I had to do it.
If you don't mind me asking, did that impact your career at all? I mean, did you feel like your performance
Oh,
kind of dropped at work?
100%. I
Yeah,
mean, I couldn't. I wasn't sleeping. I was sleeping less than 10 hours a week.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
and my nervous system felt like it was on fire. Like
yeah,
almost 18 hours a day,
yeah,
and I couldn't quit moving. I'm brain fog. Just
yeah.
like I'm a very avid board gamer. Like my
Okay.
wife, just an example, she got me like a mug that says like if it doesn't have 500 pages of rules and 300 pieces, I don't want to play it. Like that's the kind
Yeah,
of
sure.
thing I like to play. And I just remember at one point when it first hit, and my kids wanted to play a game which I normally would have loved. Is basically like a Yahtzee, right?
Yeah,
It's some form of Yahtzee,
sure. Yeah,
and
yeah,
is the best way I can describe it. And I could not figure out how to play it. I
yeah.
could not figure out the rules at all.
That is crazy. Man, I'm telling you, Josh, I can relate so much to your story, man. I was playing I think it was Clue with my cousins at one point. They have kids.
Mhm.
And we went through the instructions of this game 30 times. And we played the game. I could not figure out how to play the game. This was 6 months
Yeah,
after I came off the medication. It made absolutely no sense. And I'm watching my cousin's kids who are, like 9 and 13, figuring this out with ease like it was
yeah,
nothing. And I'm over here and I'm like, I'm college educated. I'm a pretty smart guy. I should be able to figure this out, but
yeah,
I couldn't for the life of me figure out how to play this board game. So you mentioned that was kind of just that clicked with me. It kind of gave me a little flashback to something similar that I had gone through. I really do feel you on that. And
yeah.
I
It's
know
wild.
it is wild, man. It's absolutely crazy. And again, there's no rhyme or reason. You can't explain this to somebody either unless they've gone through it. I mean, to have significant brain
You
fog,
can't.
how do you even articulate that, you know?
You
I
can't.
almost describe it
Hardly.
like, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say hardly any of the symptoms you can't. I mean, just like if someone would have explained it to me before I went through this, I would not have understood it. I
Right.
just wouldn't.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think if you had known about some of these potential symptoms, do you think you would have taken the risk and taken the
No,
medication?
absolutely not.
Right.
No,
Yeah.
100% no.
I don't, if anybody, if you, if anybody ever decide or goes through this, they will recognize right then, like they would never have taken this medication if they had known about this. They wouldn't even consider it at that point. The brain fog itself is unbelievably crippling, you know. For me, I would imagine
Mhm.
this is what a traumatic brain injury is like, you know, for people.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what I mean, that's what I've told people in my life. You know, they ask me what's going on. I'm like, I have sort of this mystery illness that's equivalent to a TBI, you know. I can't think clearly. I have a
Mhm.
tough time thinking in a linear manner. I have a tough time articulating my thoughts. It's devastating. It really is. Um, but I guess how long before I don't want to, maybe you already said this. When you came off the medication, how long did it take for your symptoms to ultimately stabilize to the point where you felt like you could function again?
Uh, Probably the worst of it was over, I would say, after 12 months.
Okay.
And by the worst of it, I mean like I didn't actively want to harm myself
Right.
at
Right.
that point.
Right.
I would say it's still it was up and down after that. And I mean, it's still, to be clear, it's still up and down for me. Like I can still feel the shifts like up and down. It's just less noticeable now. Like I have days where my brain's a little bit more foggy and days where things are more clear. But it's like I said, at this point, it's nitpicking. But yeah, the worst of it was over at probably 12 months. I felt, I would say, recovered
Okay.
at maybe 18 months,
Yeah.
like to the point where life was, there was more good days than bad.
Hmm.
And then I would say I wouldn't feel like really truly recovered until May, which was about 2 years.
2 years
About
later.
2 years, I felt like where there was pretty much no more like bad days.
Okay. That's
Except for the occasional crash. Like I mentioned, like I still have like a crash day here and there,
right.
but for the most part, I was good after 2 years.
I think it's important to highlight that you still, even after 2.5, 3 years now, you still have these lingering effects. It doesn't affect you from day to day at this point, but you still have these lasting effects. And I pray they'll eventually all just go away from you, and you'll make a full recovery. But that's really important to highlight for the audience to know that even if you do get to a point where you can function again, you may still have these lingering effects indefinitely, and that's that in itself is very frightening, you know.
And one thing I want to, I mean, to that point,
Sure.
like it is, I'm going to be affected for this for the rest of my life. I will be. Like I'm terrified to take anything because I don't know if it's going to make me crash. Like
Right.
I don't know. You read all these stories about people taking different medications, and that's it sends them back down the hole. And the fact that I can still have these crashes every month, I know it's still affecting me. Like I'm scared to take a Tylenol. Like I don't know. I have no idea if it's going to affect me. I
Yeah.
just recently tried alcohol, and alcohol, it like I was sleeping great. My sleep was almost recovered completely. I tried alcohol in August, and ever since I've tried it, so this is what it's in December now, so 3 to 4 months ago, my sleep has still not recovered from when I took the alcohol, and I only had like 2 beers, basically.
And that's all.
Um, so I mean, if alcohol can do that to me,
Right.
I can't. I don't want to take any kind of pharmaceutical, so
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
it's going to affect me forever.
Like
Yeah.
I said, I'm afraid to even take supplements at this point. I used to take, fish oil
Yeah.
pills and vitamin D and what else? I had probably 4 or 5 different just natural over the counter supplements I would take every morning. I don't take those anymore because I'm afraid of what it could do to my body, what could happen to it. And I can drink a little bit at this point, but I do notice it's almost like a very persistent hangover that lasts for days now, if not up to a week, even with the smallest amount of alcohol intake. So it takes almost nothing for me. My body is just hypersensitive, and you're right. I mean, the unfortunate part is that unless we develop a cure for this, these effects will potentially be lifelong, and that's why we push so hard to to get research going and to get more people involved and get people to go public, because we want to get this figured out. I mean, I don't want to live the rest of my life dealing with these persistent symptoms. And even though you're nearly recovered, I'm sure you would love to get rid of the lingering symptoms as well, you know?
Like, yes,
Oh,
100%.
yeah, yeah. Well, Josh, I really appreciate you you sharing your story on here. You know, I try to tell people too, you know, everyone, for some reason, there's this connotation that going public is somehow career suicide, and that that really couldn't be further from the truth. I'm a corporate professional myself. I have a secret security clearance. I was in the military for 6 years. This has had no effect on my career by going public. What has had an effect on my career is post-finasteride syndrome itself. That is the one thing that's affected my day-to-day operations, my ability to function, my ability to interact with people. So I try to let people know that going public, it's really one of the best things you can do. It helps, it gives the community a voice. It shows people that this is a legitimate issue, and it helps drive this issue forward. So really appreciate you taking the time to share this. And I really am so sorry you're going through this, Josh. I mean, you said you have a wife, you have kids, obviously, you have a career. You were doing everything right in life, man, and you didn't deserve this. So I really, my heart goes out to you, but I am glad to hear that you have recovered to a certain extent where you can function again. Before we hop off, do you have any closing statements you want to make, or anything else you want to say?
No, I mean, I guess, same to you and same to everyone out there in the community. I'm sorry that everyone else has to go through this. I feel for you. I hope one day everyone can be at least recovered to an extent like me.
Yeah,
Wish for nothing more. So
absolutely. Well, Josh, thank you so much again, and yeah, take care.
thanks. Bye, Mark.